All right, welcome back in Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. Let's get the latest updates out of the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia says that it is open to peace with Ukraine, but achieving its goals remains a priority. That's according to a Kremlin spokesperson on Sunday. He said it days after President Trump gave Moscow a 50-day deadline to agree to a ceasefire or face tougher sanctions. Russian officials have repeatedly rejected accusations from Ukraine and its Western partners of stalling peace talks. We do have Hal Kempfer still here. Hal, the Kremlin says it's open to peace, but let's make something clear. They also want to achieve their goals. They say that's a priority. Remind the people at home, what are Russia's goals, and are their goals compatible with peace?
Well, I would put it this way, Austin. Their idea of peace would be when there's no piece of Ukraine left that's still under Ukrainian control. They still have gone back as recently as this last week, pushing out these absolutist, sort of extreme goals that Ukraine is intrinsically part of Russia. We've heard multiple spokesmen from the Kremlin saying that over and over again. Now they kind of caveat a little bit of this. There's 5 oblasts, which are provinces or like states that they largely control. Some of them they absolutely control, but there are a lot of them they're actually in contention, particularly up in the Donbass region. And they're what they would like to see is that Ukraine simply pulls out of this altogether, basically forsakes that sovereign Ukrainian territory, completely cedes it over to Russia, and that's what they're asking for. Now, first off, Ukraine can't agree to that under their constitution. They cannot agree to just simply give away sovereign territory like that to Russia. The second thing is it's a horrible precedent, and it appears that is not acceptable, certainly to Ukraine, but it's not acceptable to NATO, the European Union membership, and frankly, with the clear shift that we have seen with the Trump administration, it's not acceptable to the United States either. So what he's done is he's gone out there and basically said, yeah, we agree with peace if we get everything that we set out to do, which is a pardon the expression, but it's kind of a nothing burger, if you will. And I think that's how it's going to be received, which is more over the top Russian rhetoric about seizing and taking all of Ukraine.
President Trump has repeatedly called for peace in this war. The way he usually phrases it, Hal, is that he wants people to stop dying. But people are still dying, and the war shows no signs of slowing. At what point does this hit a breaking point with the White House?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think there's more likely scenario in what seems to be rolling out. Condoleezza Rice was talking about this too. She sees this as she didn't use the term strategic inflection point, but she sees this as a huge shift in the Trump administration policy, that they're not going to just blindly pursue peace at any price, so to speak, that they are really looking at this and they see the number one problem towards any sort of settlement being Putin and the Kremlin. And so what you're seeing is we've kind of opened up sending our weapons, after that little brief halt of sending weapons recently. We've opened up sending weapons. We've kind of set up a new conduit for sending weapons, a new way to fund sending those weapons using NATO European membership funds to pay for U.S. weapons going over. So all that's happening. A couple other things behind the scenes is most of the 49 M1 Abrams tanks from Australia that were promised to Ukraine have now been delivered. They are in Ukraine. I know that doesn't seem like much, but that could be something critical to maybe getting a breakthrough on some of the front lines that have been rather static for a long period of time there. So what you're seeing is that the U.S. is shifting towards this and really looking towards a change in the military dynamic tied to what's going to happen on the diplomatic side. And frankly, when you're talking peace negotiations and stuff, it's always the military dynamic that drives whatever happens in the diplomatic side. And I say that because a lot of times I'll hear people come out and say, oh, it's just we have to do diplomacy. We have to do diplomacy. It's like diplomacy is simply talking about recognition of what's on the ground or what could happen or what is happening. it doesn't occur in a separate universe away from what's reality is on the ground in terms of where forces are and everything else. So that's why I think we're kind of shifting towards is really focusing on the military side to shift the conditions whereby the discussion can take place.
Who's winning on the battlefield, Hal? Who has the upper hand? I've read recently that the Russians have made some incremental gains during their summer offensive.
If you look at the amount of forces they've put in, they should have made tremendous gains. They are not making much headway at all. They have taken I think they've taken potentially 3 small towns in the last couple of weeks. Not, and keep in mind that when they finally take these towns, there's no Ukrainians there. They've all pulled back and stuff. And in many cases, I'll see these kind of say 3 strategic villages or whatever, and rarely are they all that strategic. It's just a modest gain of ground. What we are seeing, though, is that Ukraine has really ramped up its drone production, not just first person view drones on the front lines, which they're doing in droves. That is a drone intensive environment from both sides. But as Russia has launched these massive waves of drones with some missiles into Ukraine, Ukraine has also responded by sending fairly large waves of drones deep into Russia, to include in Moscow. And so that's bringing the war home to Russians. And then the other thing, and maybe it'll take a while before it kind of metastasizes in Russian society, but as you know, in June, they went over 1 million Russian men lost in this war over this 3+ year period. That to me seemed like a pretty impressive, a pretty big number. That's something you can really kind of focus on. You go, wow, this has cost Russia, 1 million men, most of them killed, some of them, debilitated, if you will. They'll never, certainly removed from the front lines, removed from any military service in Ukraine. But when you look at that, you wonder how long will it take the Russians to really understand what that means. And I think that loss, combined with this growing recession in the Russian economy, may have a unique dynamic to put pressure on Putin. Now, I should mention Zelensky has said he wants to have peace talks, and he's actually proposed, and the U.S. has said it as well. They've actually proposed another set of peace talks, potentially in Istanbul. We'll see if that takes place.
Be interesting to see if it does take place. Of course, I also am curious to see if there will ever be a face-to-face meeting between Putin and Zelensky sometime in the near future. Hal Kempfer, we have done 2 segments, and we have a third one coming up. We've got to talk about the Middle East. First, before we do that, a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.